reactions? Mr. Gibson.
You've just hit me with in a hot spot there. The issue of trade description, and what happens quite often and we see this in the pulse trade, where there is a fluctuation in the market and a shipment is held up because of an argument about quality, because there is no agreement on what the quality standard should be. And one of the planks that we're working on and have been quite successful at in the past is getting nomenclature, that's the description, the words that are used to describe a quality, the quality parameters themselves. And this is not, I'm not talking about phytosanitary issues now, but they sometimes get confused. It is hugely important that we remove that barrier to the movement of goods, because the cost is enormous in the community. In defence of OLAM, I should just point out that, for example, in Australia and Canada, you're sometimes talking about 2,000 or 3,000 kilometres between the farm and the port, and also you're possibly talking about processes that are taking place in between, which do eat up some of that 65%. Mind you, I think that there is also a need for greater transparency and price disclosure. And one of the ways that we can deal with that is to actually bring all the members of the trade together and inform them about what's happening from the farm to the consumer. And this should be a plank that we employ. We're doing it within the pulse industry. We're not 100% there yet, but we have forums when we bring the whole of the industry together and we discuss these things. We have newsletters. We have market bulletins about what's happening in the marketplace, which are getting out not just to one sector of the industry, but to all sectors, so that they're clear on what's happening between the sectors. The other point, Valentine, that I want to make about what you said, and I take this point about only a small percentage of rice, the total rice production in the world being traded. The same applies to pulses. There are 60 to 65 million tonnes on average, and sometimes up to 70 million tonnes of pulses grown in a year in present circumstances. But only 10 or 12 of those are actually traded as exported product. And most of that comes from Australia, well, I should say Canada first, the biggest exporter, Australia, and then countries like Myanmar and Tanzania, who pull up somewhat behind most of the time. And the point about that is that the principal reason for growing those crops in Australia and Canada is not about nutrition, it's not about feeding the poor, it's about the rotational benefits that those crops bring to the following cereal crop by breaking disease cycles. And because pulse crops are nitrogenous, they actually reduce the input costs for the following wheat crop or other cereal crop and can increase yields of that by up to 30%. So growers in those two countries, who are the major exporters of pulses in the world, are going to continue growing them only while they provide those benefits in their rotation. And we have to take that into account. That has to be understood when we're talking about the supply equation.
Pak Chandra, a quick reaction or comment on Ms. Valentine's 4 points?
Yes, a very good comment from Ms. Valentine, and it's again repeating what I'm trying to say before, like there should be more interaction between governments so that it can reduce the tariff, at the same time it's not hurting their local farmers, to maintain an affordable food price. We don't have to mention even cheap, we just say it's affordable, so it's a win-win situation for both the farmers and the end buyers of the rice itself. Secondly, there's a good example that the Asian community having now, which we have an Asian rice reserve stock, which is include the Asian country, plus, if I'm not mistaken, Japan, Korea, and China, where everybody chip in certain amount of financing to keep the rice stock in certain country, which have an excess of rice that can be used for the country in needs. For example, the natural disasters, such and such. And finally, with the idea of Ms. Valentine of the capacity improvement, which also maybe should add also the infrastructure improvement, where, like you mentioned, in Africa, a lot of the rice is coming from Asia, and about 10% of the rice cost itself is come on the freight cost. So if the Thai exporter and Thai government's idea is try to optimize the option that we have for the transportation system, so we don't have to pay that much for the transporting the rice cargo itself to Africa. And one example of collaboration that the Thai government do with the neighboring country, in this case with Myanmar, is to open a Dawei port, which is a deep sea port, where it will quite significantly reduce the freight cost of rice from Asia to Africa. And at the end, it will benefit the African buyers without hurting the Thai farmers. Means like we don't have to reduce the farming's cost, but we try to reduce the additional costs that come in between the trade. That's all.